You walk into a room and before you say a single word, people have already decided something about you. Not based on your name, not based on your personality, based on something invisible that walked in with you. A number nobody can see, but everybody somehow senses. You felt it before. The way a conversation shifts. The way a smile arrives a half-second late or a half-second early. The way some doors open before you even reach for the handle and others stay shut no matter how politely you knock. This is how the world treats you at every income level. And the strange part isn't that it happens. The strange part is how well everyone hides it. You're filling out a rental application for a small apartment, the kind with thin walls and a landlord who answers his own phone. Under monthly income, you write a number that makes you feel a small flicker of shame, even though you worked hard for every dollar of it. 2 days later, you get a call. His voice is polite but distant. "We had a lot of applicants," he says. "We went with someone else." You never find out who. You never find out why. You just know that somewhere, a number on a piece of paper made a decision about your life before a human being ever did. At work, your manager hands out next month's schedule and you notice your name keeps landing on the shifts nobody wants. The ones that quietly signal who's replaceable and who isn't. Nobody says it out loud. Nobody has to. You go home and open your banking app and the balance sits there, low and familiar, like a weather forecast you've stopped checking because you already know what it says. Here's the truth nobody tells you about low income. It's not really about the lack of money. It's about the lack of leverage. Every conversation, every negotiation, every no you receive happens because both sides already know you have no other option. Indifference at scale looks exactly like cruelty, and at this level you feel it everywhere. In waiting rooms, in customer service lines, in the way your time is treated as worth less than everyone else's. But something is about to shift in a way you don't expect at all. You get a new job, a modest raise, nothing dramatic, just enough to nudge your income into a number that, on paper, looks like progress. The first thing you notice is small. Your card no longer hesitates at checkout. That half-second delay you used to brace for, the one that used to make your stomach drop, simply isn't there anymore. You don't celebrate it. You don't even mention it to anyone. But you notice. At a work happy hour, a coworker jokes about splitting the bill 4 ways. And for the first time, you don't run the math in your head before agreeing. It's a small moment. It feels enormous. At home, a subscription you forgot about quietly renews and charges your card. The exact mistake that used to send you spiraling. This time you just sigh, mutter something annoyed, and move on with your day. The emotional weight of the same mistake has changed, even though the mistake itself hasn't. And here's the surprising insight hiding inside this level. Money doesn't remove problems. It changes how loud they're allowed to be in your head. Your landlord, the same one who barely returns your calls, suddenly responds within the hour when you mention a leaking faucet. You didn't change apartments. You didn't change buildings. You just changed how replaceable you look on paper. The system didn't get kinder. Your number just got slightly less ignorable. You're sitting across from a loan officer, applying for your first real car loan, something with actual monthly payments and actual stakes. She glances at your income on the screen and her posture shifts just slightly, leaning forward instead of back. "Let's see what we can get you approved for," she says, and the word "we" lands strangely in your chest, like you've quietly been upgraded onto a team you didn't know existed. You leave with an approval that, a year ago, would have ended in a polite rejection letter mailed 2 weeks later. That night you mention the car in the family group chat and the replies come faster than usual, more enthusiastic, almost competitive. An aunt who never comments suddenly has opinions about which color you should pick. You laugh about it, but somewhere underneath the laugh you notice the pattern. Attention seems to follow income the way moths follow light, except moths never pretend they're drawn to something else. At work, you get pulled into an unplanned meeting, and your manager mentions almost casually that leadership has been keeping an eye on your trajectory. Nobody used that phrase before this race. Now it's said twice in one sentence. Here's the uncomfortable truth surfacing at this level. Visibility isn't only about talent. It's about crossing thresholds other people decided mattered, long before you ever walked into the room. The system noticed you, not because you became more skilled overnight, because a number next to your name crossed a line on someone else's spreadsheet. You're in a doctor's waiting room, except this time it's different. Your company's new health plan means you barely glance at the bill before booking the appointment. The receptionist, same chain, different branch, uses your first name before you've even finished introducing yourself. "We have you down for the full consultation," she says, smiling in a way that feels just slightly warmer than the smile you remember from a cheaper clinic with a shorter appointment years ago. You don't know if the smile actually changed or if you're just less braced for it to disappear. That uncertainty itself feels like quiet progress. At dinner with old friends, you reach for the check almost automatically and notice with a small flicker of guilt that nobody objects the way they used to. The role you used to play, the one who calculated tips carefully, who suggested splitting things evenly, has been quietly replaced without anyone discussing it. You didn't apply for this new role. It simply arrived alongside your paycheck. At work, an opportunity comes up for a project with real visibility, the kind that used to go to people who'd been there for years. Your manager says your name first. You realize almost uncomfortably that this version of being noticed feels different from being seen for your work. It feels like being seen for your trajectory. Here's the realization that settles in, quiet and a little unsettling. The world isn't responding to who you are. It's responding to where you appear to be headed. Nobody says it, but everyone somehow already acts like it's true. You buy your first home, nothing extravagant, just a place with your name on the deed. At closing, the agent who once seemed rushed and distracted now lingers, shaking your hand twice, asking if you have any other properties in mind for the future. You don't. But the question itself feels like a door being propped open. A neighbor you've never spoken to waves from across the street the very first week, then again the second, then invites you over for a barbecue by the third. You wonder, half joking to yourself, if the invitation was for you, or for the address. At work, your name starts appearing on emails you weren't copied on before. Internal threads about budget, about planning, about decisions that used to happen entirely without you. Nobody explains the change. You're simply suddenly in the room. A family member calls, not to check in, but to ask carefully, almost rehearsed, if you'd be willing to help out with something, just until things even out for them. You say yes before you've even processed the irritation underneath your generosity. Here's the quiet, uncomfortable truth of this level. The moment people sense stability in you, they start treating your money as a shared resource, even when it isn't. Nobody asks if you're comfortable. They simply assume you must be, because the alternative would mean admitting they're asking for too much. The money changed how people approach you. It didn't change how honestly they talk to you about why. You take a new role, a real promotion. The kind with a title that makes people pause when you say it out loud. The first sign isn't a raise. It's a parking spot closer to the entrance that nobody assigned but somehow everyone now avoids. In a meeting, you make a comment you would have made 2 years ago, word for word, and this time people write it down. The room doesn't laugh louder. It just listens differently, leaning in a half second sooner than before. At a restaurant with colleagues, the host glances at the reservation name, looks up and says, "Right this way." In a tone reserved, you realize for names the system has flagged as worth a better table. You didn't ask for the better table. The system simply decided on your behalf that you'd earned one. An old friend from years ago reaches out of nowhere, warm, nostalgic, eventually drifting toward a business opportunity they'd love your thoughts on. You recognize the pattern before the message even finishes loading. Here's the realization that stings a little the first time it happens. Once people sense you've crossed a threshold, your attention itself becomes a currency they want to spend. You stop being someone people simply enjoy talking to and start being someone people calculate the value of talking to. The strange part isn't that this happens. The strange part is how long it takes you to notice it happening to you specifically, instead of just other people. You're sitting in a boardroom, your name on the door for the first time, a small brass plate that took you years to earn and a single afternoon to install. People stand a little straighter when you walk past, not out of fear exactly, but out of some quiet calculation about what your mood today might mean for their week. A vendor you've never met sends a gift basket to your office unprompted, with a card that says, "Looking forward to working together," before you've agreed to work together at all. You realize that some relationships now begin with the assumption of your yes, because saying no at this level has started to feel almost rude to other people, even when it's simply honest. At home, an old classmate posts something online tagging you, mentioning your title, your company, in a tone that reads less like pride in you and more like proof of proximity to you. You scroll past it, uneasy in a way you can't quite name. A reporter from a small industry newsletter requests a quote for a story, and you read the email 3 times before responding, choosing each word like it might outlive the conversation it came from. Here's the quiet, lonely truth surfacing at this level. The more visible you become, the less anyone tells you the truth, because truth, at this altitude, starts to feel risky to deliver. People don't lie to you outright. They simply stop correcting you, stop disagreeing, Stop offering the version of honesty that used to come free when you had nothing they wanted from you. You're at your old neighborhood, the one you grew up in, walking past the same corner store that used to give you free candy when you couldn't afford it as a kid. Outside, a teenager is counting change in his palm, recounting it twice the way you used to, hoping the total somehow grows the second time. The cashier glances at him with the exact same flat, distracted indifference you remember from your own childhood decades ago in this exact doorway. You step forward quietly and tell the cashier to add it to your total before the boy even finishes counting. He looks up at you confused, unsure what just happened or why. You don't explain, you just say, "I used to stand right where you're standing." And in that single sentence, the entire shape of this video reveals itself. The world never actually changed how it treats people. It only changes how it treats you. The moment your number crosses a line, nobody draws out loud, but everybody somehow obeys. The smiles that arrived faster, the calls that got returned sooner, the doors that opened before you reached for them. None of that was really about you. It was about what you represented at each specific level to people who had already decided your worth before you said a single word. And the real question this video was always asking was never how the world treats you. It was whether you'd remember, once the world finally started treating you well, how it once felt when it didn't.